Together, growing in faith, changing communities. My dear brothers and sisters, today I would like us to reflect on the book of Exodus, chapter 17, from verses 8 to 13. This is quite a beautiful reading for me. It is God who speaks to Moses. And you will soon realize in this short pericope that there are two battles that are taking place. There are also two leaders that are leading this battle. And yet, at the pinnacle of it, you find God. There is what I call the physical battle. Then there is a spiritual battle. God says to Moses, go and ask Joshua to go and gather the men so that they prepare for battle. The first thing that I'm quite excited about is how God believes in a succession plan. He introduces Joshua to Moses as a young man. Moses does not know that he's preparing someone who will take over his ministry. He does not know that God wants these young men one day to finish and to fulfill what God has begun in and through Moses. As for me, is something absolutely amazing. Are there people that God has brought into your life so that you mentor them, so that you journey with them, so that you help them in order for them to find their own purpose and hopefully to live it out as best as they can? The second aspect of this, it is Moses who says to Joshua, go out and gather people who will be with you in this battle. But as you go into this battle against the Amalekites, I and Aaron and Ur will go up to the mountain of the Lord. Now, geographically, this is powerful. Joshua is down in the valley. Moses is up on the mountain. In a spiritual aspect, Joshua fights the physical battle. Moses fights the spiritual battle. Are you fighting any battles in your life? Are they spiritual or are they physical? Half the time what we meet as physical battles stem from the spiritual battles. And Moses says to Joshua, I will go up to the mountain of the Lord and I will hold this rod, this staff. And you remember the story of the rod, of the staff. The first time we came in contact with it, it's when Moses threw it down and it became a snake in front of Pharaoh that ate all the other snakes. He touched the water with this rod. The water turned into blood. Then he touched it again, it became normal water. We know what he did with the rod. When he lifted up his hand, the sea of reeds separated into two. But we also know how he lifted it back and how the sea of reeds engulfed and killed the Israelites' army. We know when they're in the wilderness how he struck the rod and water came gushing out of the rock. He goes up with something that he knows that God can use in every battle. What do you have for your battles? And so as Moses goes up, and every time he lifts up his hands, the Israelites win the battle. Every time he lifts up his hands, the Israelites have an advantage. Do you have someone who stands for you before God? Some years ago in the parish, I introduced something which I personally found was powerful. Have a patron saint for your family. Have someone who prays for you. Someone who prays for you when you cannot pray for yourself. Someone who stands before God day in and day out and mention your name when you can't do it anymore. I also introduce what I call a prayer warrior, a prayer partner. Someone who will always faithfully mention your name to God. Now, what fascinates me is that as Moses is up on the mountain and as he lifts up his hands get weary and he gets tired. And every time he lowers them, Joshua loses. Even the strong people get tired. Even the strong-willed people get tired. Even heroes get tired. Sometimes it's okay to be tired. Sometimes it's okay to tell them that I can't do this anymore. Sometimes we need to tell them I don't have the strength to continue. And so what does God say to Moses? He says to him, why don't you use Ur? Why don't you use Aaron? And I love what they do. Aaron and Ur, they bring this big rock and they allow Moses to sit. The provider also needs to be provided. The caregiver also needs someone to care for them. You can give and give and give, but eventually you also go dry. What is feeding you? What is giving you that oomph to continue? What nourishes you? Eventually, dear brothers and sisters, if this container of 5 liters is given to all of you every day and nothing fills it, eventually we are going to be scraping the barrel. It's okay to be strong. It's okay to always think of others. But who thinks of you? One of my professors always said to us, you cannot give what you don't have. And so as he sits down, he takes a break, he takes time out, and he says, I cannot do this, allow me to sit. But he's aware that as he sits, Joshua loses. So sometimes we say, I cannot give up. And Aaron and Ur say, we're going to stand by you, and we're going to hold your hand. As I hold your right, he holds your left. And so it's no longer only you who lifts up, but you have a team that also supports you. Birds of the same feather flock together. What am I listening to? If I always listen to a bird that chirps, that always tells me how stupid, how useless am I, eventually I'm going to believe that. One of the greatest things that I'm forever grateful to God for was to have great men and women in my life. Coming up of my formation, I had one of the greatest men, Father Anton Billy and Father Fisom Keys. They believed in me and they saw something which I had not yet realized. They groomed me. By the time I was preparing for ordination, I was already being groomed. They'd already given me responsibilities which were way beyond what I would have expected. But eventually I knew and I grew into what God was doing. Do you have someone like that who believes in you, who takes time to stand with you? And Moses can rest because he knows there are people by his side. Can you rest? Can you say to God, I've given my best, now I can die in peace. My faith, my family is in good hands.